powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, it's a Friday. It's a happy hour Friday. That means Adam Caplan is here. And, of course, we've been breaking through the Eagles' schedule. We looked at the first 8 games, and Adam will give us a little insight to how the Eagles match up with each of the teams. We'll take a look at the third 4 opponents. This is week 9. And then 11, 12, and 13. The Eagles have a bye in week number 10. So we'll start to look at some of those with Adam Caplan right now. Now, Adam, we're live at Yuri's in Wildwood for this Happy Hour Friday. And the first thing I got asked was, who's on for Football at 4 today? And I said, Adam Caplan. He says, you're his favorite. So there you go.
Really? Wow, that's nice to hear. Now I have one fan. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, we're giving away a trip to Pittsburgh's PNC Park today.
Nice.
Oddly enough, I didn't say oddly enough, he's not even entered for it. He just happened to see we were here.
Nice. Hey, by the way, I was there in 2014. I made the road trip from Philly with a friend of mine who actually had a son who was drafted by the Phillies. I met Ruben Amaro. That stadium is absolutely awesome. I got to tell you, it's downtown Pittsburgh. It's a great place to watch a game, I got to tell you. It was awesome.
Yep. Oh, it's one of my favorites. I was there back in 2021, the first year of the ballpark, and I'm going to the trip with the winner. I'm actually going on this trip this time around. I don't always go on these trips, but this one I'm going on. But nice. One of the we give away football trips all the time, and one of the trips we've done before is Dallas. The Cowboys. The Eagles will play the Cowboys in week number 9. The game will be in Philadelphia. So let's look at that matchup. Obviously, this is one everyone's going to be looking at. It'll be the first time they meet. Dallas plus 170 to win the NFC East. Their over-under for wins, I think, is actually a little low. 9.5 for the Cowboys.
Yeah, and last year they were 12-5. Now the over is minus 150. Now if you want to go 10.5, obviously your odds are better. But yeah, obviously, they should be better than that. Now, here's a crazy thing, Mike. Most people do not know this. As bad as the NFC East has been over the years, the NFC East is the only division. I might have said this earlier on your show earlier this week, but people don't believe this, but it's true. The NFC East last year, the only division without a team with a losing record. So it's not as bad as you think. Cowboys are going to be a good team, as Greg Cosell from NFL Films told us on our show this week. We're doing divisional previews, and we did the Cowboys. They had their own show. We did a Cowboys show, and Greg agrees. This roster's really improved. Brandon Cooks is added. Michael Gallup is over his ACL injury. He'll be better this season. They've got a couple minor offensive line issues. Now, the big thing, Mike, is Mike McCarthy, who fired Kellen Moore. Mike wanted to call the plays. In fact, I'm told he wanted to call the plays when he got in there, when he became the head coach, replacing Jason Garrett, but Jerry Jones made the call. It was going to be Kellen Moore, and then Mike McCarthy this year said enough. He wants to run his West Coast system, which is completely different than Kellen Moore's, and things are going to be a little bit different. They're going to run the ball more, I'm told, and it's going to be old school West Coast offense, and the tight ends probably will be a little bit more involved.
Yeah, how will that scheme change with McCarthy calling plays? I think one of the things we talked about in the past is, they had Pollard, and they didn't use him enough. So Pollard will be the guy, but are they going to overuse him? Who else do they have?
Yeah, and that's a concern, Mike, because he's coming off of an ankle fracture. They have Ronald Jones, who never lived up to being a second-round pick with the Bucs. Deuce Vaughn, who's a small little change-up running back. Malik Davis, who's an undrafted free agent last year. So they need another back, and they've not closed the door on Ezekiel Elliott, but they're looking elsewhere, and they're trying to get Pollard's extension done. I think it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of work. Chances are it won't get done, but they haven't ruled it out. Remember, the franchise deadline is 4 p.m. Eastern on Monday. If not, Pollard plays on a one-year franchise tender. But that's a problem. They need a good backup with size to complement Pollard. And, Mike, the other thing is the regression of Dak Prescott, who's never been a turnover player, forced too many throws. They didn't have Brandon Cooks last year. Michael Gallup was playing hurt. In fact, Michael Gallup got his contract restructured. He actually took a pay cut. So, yeah, now you got Gallup's healthy. He'll be their X-receiver. They're going to go with Luke Schoonmaker, who actually met at a football camp last weekend. He's a big guy, a second-round pick out of Michigan. Jake Ferguson at tight end. But now with Brandon Cooks in there, Mike, they're going to be a little bit more 11 personnel, which means 3 receivers.
All right. I guess one question everybody was really trying to figure out is Dak Prescott. What is he? Who is he? What happened to him? I mean, when he got hurt before that ankle injury a couple of years ago, he was unbelievable. He always seems to be unbelievable against the Eagles, and yet there's a lot of people out there that just don't trust him.
Yeah, he turns 30 in a couple of weeks. He's not a running back, so you can play well into your late 30s. As Rich Gannon told me, Rich would have played probably until his 40s had he not had a career-ending neck injury. And Dak, look, he as I said earlier, he's just not a turnover guy, but it just seemed like he tried to force things because they were not good enough. His timing was off, and Dak, to his credit, took responsibility. He said he knew he did some things he's not done before in terms of forcing throws. Now, here's the problem, though. To help that, you need to have some sort of a running game. And Tony Pollard's super explosive, but Pollard, Mike, last season only had 4 games with over 15 carries. That tells me he won't be able to handle a lot of volume. So they really do need to get a veteran running back in there, whether it's Leonard Fournette or re-sign Elliott. By the time the end of August rolls around, I'm sure they'll have added a veteran running back, but that's something you have to look at. And I believe Dak will rebound. But I also find it interesting when you talk about the Eagles' schedule. Yeah, this is the first time that they play Dallas in Week 9. In fact, if you look at the Eagles' schedule, Mike, they only have 2 1:00 games within the first 9. That's insane.
Yeah, I remember when that schedule came out, Adam, we were going through the fact because you guys obviously do the Inside the Birds pregame show. All these games are at 4 o'clock or night games. Very few 1 o'clock games for the Eagles this year. When we talk about Dallas, Adam, what about their defense? I mean, because to me, we talked about the year that Dak had. He had to carry that team because their defense was so bad, but they're so good now.
They're one of the deepest teams in the National Football League. You could argue they're the deepest team at corner. They had Stephon Gilmore, who maybe has 2 good years left in him. They acquired him from the Colts. Trayvon Diggs, he makes a lot of big plays. He gives up plays. Jordan Lewis was hurt last season. He returns as nickel. Jerron Bland was a nickel who was terrific as a rookie. He was a 5th rounder. Kelvin Joseph never worked out as a 2nd-round pick 2 years ago. He certainly's got to prove himself. Jaron Kearse is a terrific, really good, a very underrated safety. He covers the tight ends. Nashon Wright's a tall corner. Boy, they are really loaded, Mike. They're like 6 deep at corner. And the Eagles are a spread. They go with a lot of 11 personnel. So, look, this will be a fun matchup. It's more even. And you know how bad they were up the middle last year? They were not good against the run. Mozzie Smith, that first rounder who we talked a lot about before the draft, he's going to provide an impact for their defense, particularly against the run.
All right, Adam Caplan, let's go to Week 11. They have a bye in Week 10. They'll play the Chiefs, and this is the Super Bowl rematch. They're in Kansas City, and everybody's favorite is the Chiefs. 11.5 is the over-under there. They're minus 165, a heavy favorite to win the the West.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, when you look at this game here, how about the Eagles coming out of the bye, and we'll get to the game after it, but it's at Kansas City versus Buffalo at home, and then versus the Niners. We'll talk about it. I mean, show me another gauntlet for any NFL team. Like, the Eagles' first half of their schedule is very winnable, but this is not that they can't beat any of these teams, but my goodness, I don't know if any team has a 3-game stretch like this coming out of a bye. It's insane. So, now, this game's on the road to Kansas City. You know how hard it is to play in Arrowhead. The Chiefs last season, Mike, were 14-3. The Chiefs are minus 165 to win the AFC West. The over-under is 11.5 wins at MGM. The over is minus 130. The under is plus 110. I actually like, believe it or not, over. I mean, they got 14 wins. I get it. Without Tyreek Hill, Andy Reid did an unbelievable job of manufacturing points. You could argue that it was Patrick Mahomes' best season. How did they do it? Mike, they went with way more 12 personnel and some 13 three tight end sets. Nobody knew this was coming. I give Andy Reid and their staff and really Matt Nagy, who was their passing game coordinator, who was back with Andy, and I know Andy has a lot of trust in him. I remember Andy telling me about Matt some years ago, and then obviously Eric Bieniemy, who's left. Eric put the run game concepts together. But I expect, because they're way deeper in receiver, Mike, for them to go back to more 11 personnel.
Adam Caplan, let's look at, Mahomes, obviously, and that offense. And, he loses Tyreek Hill, as you kind of talked about there, and you take a look around. I said, their offense without Hill, you were thinking in the Super Bowl, it's like, man, they just don't have that guy.
I know.
So do you think they'll change their philosophy on offense? Do we think we'll see a different, or are we going to continue to see exactly, what they've been doing over all these years with Andy Reid? And no Bieniemy there.
Here's the one difference, here's the one difference I didn't mention. Kadarius Toney, remember they made that trade from the Giants. He was hurt once again, but he did score in the Super Bowl. So they're going to expand his role now that he's healthy, and if he could stay healthy. With Sky Moore, a second-year receiver who didn't do much, who I know they're really excited about. Justin Watson, who, by the way, you might remember from University of Pennsylvania, they re-signed him for 1 year. He's their shot play guy. Rashee Rice is the second-round pick. They've got John Ross, a former first-round pick from the Bengals. So, Mike, they've got way more team speed. You're not going to make up for Tyreek Hill, but they've got the ability to throw the ball downfield more at receiver, and they'll do that. Of course, I had to mention Travis Kelce, the best tight end in football, who will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer for sure.
All right, Adam, defense concerns at all? Chris Jones, one of the top 5 players maybe in all of football. What do you see from that defense? Because last year they couldn't get a stop.
Yeah, and, the run defense is inconsistent. They're better at corner than they were. They're good at safety. They're really good. I mean, they're a deep defense. Chris Jones is just a great pass rusher. Now that Quinn Williams got his deal, I'm sure he'll get his deal within the next week or so. Charles Omenihu comes over from the 49ers, who I really like. And Zuke Uzama is a first-round pick out of Kansas State. I thought he would go late first round. He did. They have a great rotation now at the end. Mike Dana is very underrated as a fifth rounder of 2020. They're a team that plays a lot of nickel. They only play 2 linebackers generally with Nick Bolton and Willie Gay, and Drew Tranquill comes over from the Chargers, who's very underrated. I would like this group, Mike. They just have to play better as a unit. Steve Spagnuolo does a great job. I saw Spags a couple weeks ago at Ron Jaworski's golf tournament. Boy, he's really done a great job, Spags. Remember, he was out of football for a year when Sean Payton moved on from him, and Spags has done a phenomenal job of rebuilding that defense. And give Andy credit for bringing Spags back. That was a great decision.
All right, Adam, let's go to week number 12 because the schedule, this is the tough part of it. They go from Dallas, they go to Kansas City, and then they host Buffalo, who's plus 275 to win the East. The over-under for them, 9.5 wins for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because, they choked in the playoffs. They should have lost to Miami. I don't have the record right there. I think I actually overwrote that, Mike, but here's the thing. Here's what I know. They're not the big favorite that they used to be because of the Jets. The Jets are really going to push them for that division. It would not shock me, Mike, if the Jets won that division. You really have to wonder what's going on with the Bills. They've lost a lot of good coaches. You know about the Diggs dust-up with Josh Allen, which I'm told privately is nothing. And look, is James Cook ready to be their starter at running back? Ken Dorsey's got criticized as their offensive coordinator. He took over for Brian Dable, who's now the Giants coach. So, what happened with them, Mike? They almost got handled by Miami in the wild card round. Remember that? Miami outplayed them. Miami should have won that game in Buffalo. And I think that's where Diggs had a problem. Their offense is terrible in that game.
Yeah, and obviously, people keep talking about the window on them because they got the Jets now. You got Miami in that division. Those 2 teams are going to be pushing them. So you wonder, where that team is. This the last year for them? Is the window still there? But why did they not progress the last couple years? Is the window closing on them?
Yeah, I think the loss of Brian Dable, Bobby Johnson, their offensive line coach, Chad Hall, their receivers coach, who's now with Jacksonville. They had a really good linebackers coach who retired. Yeah, this is what doomed Andy Reid in 2012. He lost too many good lieutenants. Oh, yeah, Leslie Frazier, very odd circumstances. The Bills will not admit that he was fired, but nobody knows the exact reason why Leslie Frazier's not there. Frazier, by the way, wants to coach again, so that was very mysterious circumstances. So there's a lot of negativity, Mike, around this football team. And don't forget, on defense, that Von Miller's come back from ACL reconstruction at 33 years old. They also lost star middle linebacker Tremaine Edmonds. to the Bears, Mike, there are a lot of questions with this football team.
Yeah, Edmonds, you just mentioned, and then their pass rush. This is defensively, that's something place where they will struggle possibly. So Philadelphia has Buffalo in Week 12, and then Week 13. This one's setting up to be the one that everybody's waiting for, right? San Francisco, we heard Deebo Samuel this week. He hung up on our friend Zach Gelb. He doesn't want to talk about it anymore, but they're pretty good. 10.5 over/under San Francisco. They're here in Philadelphia.
And the reason why it's only 10.5, I was asking someone who said, he said, look, they were 13-4 last year, but remember, they don't even know they think Brock Purdy will be ready Week 1, but he didn't even start half of the season for Jimmy Garoppolo. So there are going to be questions. They're minus 165 to win the NFC West. The over, by the way, 10.5 is minus 140. So clearly, the odds makers think they'll get more than 10.5 wins. The under's plus 115. I see the problem with Purdy is, Mike, the guy was benched twice at Iowa State. He's a very limited passer. He's a timing and rhythm West Coast offensive quarterback. I get that. And then, what's crazy? They won't even let Trey Lance compete for it. How dumb is that? Trey Lance got this job taken away from him. It's not his fault that he broke his ankle. I don't agree with that. For all that they gave up for him, Mike, that surprises me.
We were talking about I was on Birds 365 with Jody and John the other day, and we were talking about just this, that the fact of what they gave up to get him.
Yeah.
It's amazing that it doesn't sound like they're giving him any opportunity because I believe John believes that Darnold will start if Purdy's not ready.
Well, no, he would have to beat him out. But I know privately someone said to me, and I'm going to talk about this, it's not a big deal. So someone of the Niners told me, literally after, I don't say they were on the bus driving to the airport, from the link, but I would say within 24 hours, I spoke to someone of the Niners. I said, well, I guess you're going to open up the job now that Brock got hurt. No, Brock's our starter. He's our leader. We're not backing off of him. I'm like, really? And Kyle Shanahan said that publicly to the media. Yeah. Nothing has changed. Brock Purdy, and by the way, I've known this. Anyone who covers the league who follows the Niners knows this. They felt Brock Purdy, because he took the less invasive elbow reconstruction. He didn't get it reconstructed. He took a less invasive surgery. They felt all along he'll be ready for Week 1, but that's one thing, Mike. Do you know how Rusty's going to be if he doesn't work in training camp? That's not good for a young quarterback.
Yeah, well, let's get your thoughts on having Christian McCaffrey now for a full season and how that will change them now, having him for the full year.
And Kyle Shanahan has never coached anyone like this. You talk about one of the best receiving backs of his day. McCaffrey, they have very good depth at the running back position if he gets hurt, and we know he's been hurt for last couple of years. I remember Mike talking to the Panthers, a year ago, and they told me they're probably not going to trade him because they thought they'd push for a wild card spot. Once they knew they were out of the playoff race, they decided to move him. And Christian McCaffrey is a special running back. He's going to help them now, but Darnold will check it down. We know Purdy will check it down. Now, we don't know about Lance because the sample size is really small. But it's all about the passing game, and they'll run a two-back system. Kyle will get someone in there and back up McCaffrey so he doesn't wear down. But I'll tell you what, though, that's a formidable offense with McCaffrey. Brandon Ayuk was one of my breakout players last season. He was great. Deebo Samuel was struggled. Deebo was hurt a lot. He wasn't with the team in the offseason because of his contract issue. They got to get him going. George Kittle's tremendous in the open space. That's a very good pass target group. That'll be a very tough matchup for the Eagles when they play them.
Yeah, and then lastly, their defense. They added Hargrave to a very good defense there. So is there a weakness of the San Francisco defense?
Yeah, and the reason why they brought him in, Mike, when they traded DeForest Buckner, they lost one of the best interior pass rushing D linemen in the NFL. So Hargrave will do that, making over $20 million over the first 2 years of his contract. It's a 2-year structure, by the way. The Niners can get out after 2 years and not owe him anything. And they're great at linebacker. The real issue is at corner. They're really weak. Shavarius Ward's good, but other than that, it's not good at all. That is when you go against the Niners, if you can protect, you got to go heavy 11 personnel and spread them out. They cannot compete against a team that's really deep at receiver. That's a game where I spread them out, and when the Eagles play them, Mike, in week number 13, that's what I'm going to do.
Adam, we know that we're counting down to the schedule. We're also counting down to training camp. 11 days away before the Eagles report next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday they will be there. So 2 Tuesdays left, and Football at 4 will be all over it, and you can check out the Inside the Birds podcast. We got a huge crowd here, by the way. All of them are big Inside the Birds fans, and they will be listening, of course, all Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
There we go. Adam Caplan, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live. So he breaks down the matchups there from week 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. The Eagles have a bye in week number 10.